And welcome inside episode 128 of Breaking Bats, presented by Not For Long Media. My name is Justin Ayers, and I am joined once again by my guy. It is Ricky Finkel. We're going to talk a little All-Star Week, Home Run Derby, All-Star Game, the festivities surrounding it, MLB, Midsummer Classic. Ricky, how are you? If for people watching on YouTube, you're coming to us from the Great White North, it appears.
Yeah, I'm doing good, Justin. I'm doing good. Nice to have a little new All-Star game content to talk about. Yeah, so instead of being in my dungeon in New York City today, I'm enjoying nature, which is a nice little switch up, but just thought I'd give the YouTube viewers a better background.
Yep. It's so good. It's like one of those like virtual ones. Yeah, it's crazy. Like I think that's also hilarious that people in New York City or even them are like, you know what? Greatest city on earth. I'd like to actually see some grass and trees and natural stuff.
Yeah, I gotta get my feet a little dirty every now and then.
Yeah, city slickers. Yeah, in your Manhattan dungeon. Okay, we'll start with the home run derby. I think if you look online, there's a couple like main key takeaways that people are all talking about. The format is obviously the big one. People are still not happy with the timed rounds. They tweaked the format again this year. It was 40 pitches per round, which I didn't know that needed to be tweaked. They only did a bracket style after the first round, which is kind of fun. I think we still saw the same complaints, especially from the players' side that we have in years past about guys are getting dog tired. Like Gunnar
Mhm.
Henderson's 23 years old, and it was like, I couldn't feel my legs. It's like, yeah, you're taking 1,000 swings in 2 minutes or whatever. Um, yeah, I also just feel like the event itself took about the same amount of time as it did with 10 outs, which is the other thing people are always wanting to have back. When you watch the Derby on Monday night, what stood out to you?
Yeah, I will say I definitely loved some of the changes, and some of the changes I didn't feel like they really did anything at all. I'd say the change up to the bracket format, where it's a first kind of round robin, everyone's all in, seemed like a no-brainer in my decision, especially after Adley Rutschman last year. So I think that was definitely a genius idea and should stay. The 40 pitch maximum and the new, I guess, what, 2 minutes in the finals, 3 or 4 minutes in the regulars. Yeah, it just didn't really make any difference at all, in my opinion. I think that I think I read somewhere that they chose that 40 pitch number just based on like that's around what the amount of pitches people normally get. So I don't really think that was kind of intended to change up that specific round that drastically, and then it didn't. Yeah, I don't really see why. You saw with the bonus rounds at the end with the outs, there was a little more juice and a little more fun on that. We could see guys going on a run, hit 4 or 5 in a row. So yeah, I would definitely be in favor of bringing back the 10 outs format for that.
I think the MVP of that night was the guy. I don't know if you saw on like the broadcast.
Mm.
He had like the headset, he had the clipboard, and his job was to explain the rules to the player basically before every round. He was like, you get 3 swings, you hit a ball this far, you get an extra one, it's outs, or blah blah blah. It's just like if it's that confusing that the guys need to be reminded in the competition of what the actual rules are. It's like I think you might have done a little too much. Um, but I just think that everybody on the internet can like wanting to have 10 outs back. I don't know. I feel like it's like the car, it's like the dog chasing the car. It's like what happens when you actually catch it? Like
Yeah,
we all as like a internet society of baseball fans are like bring 10 outs back. It's like, well, what if that happens? You guys aren't probably gonna
then what?
like it then. Like it's just nobody's ever gonna be happy.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about it, right? The point of the home run derby is we want to see some bombs. Like I don't know that it's really about, oh look, Gunnar Henderson hit 25 in the first round, or Alec Boehm hit 20 in the first round. Like that's a cool number, yeah, but we compare it to history, like it really doesn't really mean anything. We change it up so much. I feel like what I want to see is some tape measure bombs. I want to see like someone hit 500. I want to see someone like do something crazy and just hit one out of the stadium. And to do that, you can't really rush guys. So you see a lot of these guys, they take a swing, then they reset and they're not ready for the next pitch, or they can't get everything in it. So I don't really see, if we want to incentivize bombs and tape measure shots, just let a guy rest for a little bit and reset. What was really interesting to me is if you watched in the bonus rounds, every guy almost, no one swung at back to back pitches. They would swing at a pitch, take one or two. They would tell the coach, "Hey, I'm taking two here. I'm taking one." Um, just like reset and refocus. And I think that's probably a better way to do it. Um, I was just thinking about like based on my history, my baseball past. Like I've never taken like 4 or 5 rounds of 4 minute swings in a row, like in my life. I can't imagine how tiring that would be. Normally you go in there, you take 8, and this is, if I'm in the cage working 8 to 10, 12, something like that, and then get out of there and reset and refocus. But that does not take 4 minutes. That's like 30 to 40 seconds, maybe a minute. So you're just not nearly as drained, because it's clear by the end that these guys are just gassed.
I think there was a stat. It was like every home run derby winner before this was like 26 years or younger, because it's such a young man's like game. I don't know how Albert Pujols did as well as he did a couple years ago, but yeah, you're right. This event should be a celebration of the home run, of the tape measure shots, of the 500 footers, and instead you can't see where the balls land in because the next one's in the air. And also, I think it puts a little bit too much pressure on the guys throwing to the hitters. I was watching Bobby Witt Jr.'s pitcher. Dude was throwing sliders. He was throwing cutters away. And Bobby Witt Jr. is swinging at everything because he feels like he has to, and he's like chasing stuff at his neck, and he's tomahawking crap all around. It's like it just puts too much pressure on like sometimes these elderly gentlemen who are like the bullpen coaches who are themselves getting gas from throwing rapid fire baseballs. So yeah, it's a weird conundrum that we're facing right now. But I think adding more rules probably isn't the answer.
No, I think it's just someone needs to just sit down and figure it all out again. They've been too much of like, oh, we'll try this, we'll change up this one little thing, this will be fun. Like, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. Just have guys go out there and just try to hit bombs for as long as they can, or as far as they can.
I flipped over to the StatCast broadcast. I think it was on ESPN2, and they had like the normal hitting view with like the strike zone up, which I kind of like because you could see where the ball was going. But then instead of having where the ball landed, they just had the little like 3D arc showing like the trajectory and stuff. And like, so you couldn't even see it physically land in the stadium. I'm like, who would sit there and want to see like the launch angle on like a 3D graph as opposed to like, oh my God, look, this thing hit the upper deck. Why that part also confused the crap out of me. Like, what is the point?
I thought they had that on the regular broadcast too, because I thought it was cool. I'm looking at the number, not the actual like where the ball's flying. But you could see like 50-degree launch angle, 88 miles an hour, and they had it like in the corner, which I appreciated. But I'm still not watching a graphic. I'm watching the ball fly.
Yeah, I don't know why it was predominantly just graphic showing the thing, and then the person doing the camera on the main broadcast would sometimes not track the ball right because it was going so fast and far.
Sometimes they would just cut out and they wouldn't even show it.
Yeah, exactly.
I will say like,
the ones down the foul pole line are tough too.
Yeah, the one really cool thing I thought they did though was they had the angle, so like the righty batters, they had the camera like kind of behind them, like showing right field, and you could see them from behind swing and the whole ball fly. That camera angle I thought was really cool. But that doesn't really save the whole problem with the finals. Isn't that? I mean, this is the most interesting finals we've had in years, with literally coming down to the last swing, and a matter of 5-10 feet that ball goes out. But we still talk about the home run derby. It's the home run derby. It's the dunk contest, but it's not the dunk contest. It's just what it is.
It's what it's turned into, though. It's a great comparison because the NBA dunk contest, they don't even remotely have star players doing that. LeBron James doesn't do the dunk contest. Instead, you get like some borderline G League player like Glenn Robinson III won it one year. And I'm like, who the hell is that? Like, we're getting closer and closer to more of those kind of caliber of players. No disrespect, Glenn Robinson III. But yeah, we're just not getting the best story. I think all of this was the Pete Alonso, just the whole week leading up to that derby was all about him. He's locked in. He's going for the third title. And then you find out that his actual entrance in the derby cost two of his teammates a chance to be an all-star on the Mets in Lindor and Nimmo. Like, Pete's like, if I'm not an all-star, I'm not in the derby. And MLB's like, crap, we gotta have this guy. He's a big draw for this event. All right, so Pete, you're in it. You're an all-star now. Frankie and Nimmo, you can't do it. And it's just like, that was another under the radar storyline that I thought was hilarious.
Yeah, I was very aware of that storyline as a Mets fan. Pete, pretty poor showing, I won't lie, but it definitely is really annoying that the only reason that he got in because he wanted to be in the derby. I mean, I love Pete Alonso more than anyone. I hope he signs the stage with the Mets for his whole career, but he didn't deserve to be an all-star this year. Definitely not over Nimmo and Lindor. You could make the case that all three of them got in. If he was the third guy, yeah, sure, whatever. But the Mets are one of the biggest brands in baseball, being in New York, huge fan base. I feel like you would want Mets players on the team just to bring in that kind of attention. But two, Nimmo and Lindor's a guy who hasn't been an All-Star as a Met yet. Which makes no sense to me. I mean, he's started out very slow, but this year he's having a great year. So for them to like, and it's so obvious that that's what happened. That he said, I wanted to be in the Derby. If I'm only going to be in the Derby if I'm an All-Star, which I will admit, no, I have no ill will towards Pete for saying that. I don't really see why you'd want to be in the Derby and go there unless you were an All-Star. But yeah, that shouldn't have been the reason, and that the other two didn't get in. Maybe you come away, we changed the roster size, let some more guys in who deserve it, or something. I was expecting there to be a fan vote at the end of right before the game. They always used to do that, where they'd be like, last 5 guys, complete fan vote, which I didn't see this year. But I will say, so going back to what you said about comparing the dunk contest and the Derby, I will disagree with you a little bit, because the NBA, I think for a while, they were focused on getting big names and guys who were, a big draw or whatever for the dunk contest. And then guys stopped wanting to do it. And they kind of transitioned from that towards, hey, let's just get the best dunkers. So I think there was one year Derek White did it. And, not Derek White, sorry. Derek Jones Jr. From the Mavericks, where he did it. And he had played like 10 minutes in the NBA that year. He'd been in the G League all year. Mac McClung's won it a couple years in a row now, only being in the G League. And honestly, I think those are way better. Like, just get the guys who are the best dunkers, because it's a dunk contest. Baseball's a little different because the best home run hitters or the best power hitters are some of the best players. But just get some guys who are going to hit some bombs. I don't really care who they are. I mean, I want them to be big names because those are better players, but I wouldn't, say against all these guys hit 5 home runs this year. But if he hits one 530 in the Derby, I'm still going to be watching.
That's a fair point. Yeah, I think it kind of ends up working out the way it does. The star players are the home run hitters. Although I have a running text thread that I have with a buddy of mine about just like everything baseball. I think everybody who's probably a baseball fan has a couple of these buddies. I had a feeling before the Derby that Alec Boehm was going to surprise people, just because everybody in the entire universe was like, why is he here? He can't hit homers. I even said he thought he was the doubles Derby. Like, everybody was across the board, 100% of people were like, ew, Alec Boehm. So then I was like, started thinking, I was like, everybody's saying that. What if he just goes out there and balls out? What if he just swings out of his shoes and launches balls? And that's what he ended up doing. He ended up going past the first round, which nobody thought. I should have bet on him. I don't know what his odds were to like win the Derby, but Teoscar at plus 1,000 ended up winning, but I bet Boehm was way longer than that. But what did you think about Alec Boehm's experience in the home run derby?
Yeah, I will admit, I turned it on after he went on, but I was definitely very surprised to see that when I turned it on, he was in first place and had 21 in the first round. I mean, he's a big guy. He's got a great swing. There's no reason that he shouldn't be able to do it. And I think him just like everyone else, just clearly got a little bit tired towards the end and then couldn't really keep that momentum going.
Yeah, no, I think. Maybe I'll have a little more compassion for the next Derby when guys who have like 6 home runs enter it. Cause I feel like they have to, if you enter the home run derby, you have to know that you like can compete a little bit, right? Like they don't just like let, Luis Arias compete in the home run derby who can't really launch balls. Like if you're going to do it, if you sign up and you're on and you're in the field of players, you probably can hit some taters. So I think next year that might be my new thing. Whoever has the fewest, I'm betting on them because nobody else is.
Yeah. I mean, if there's value, it's a good call.
Yeah. So shout out Alec Boehm. All right. Yep. We'll talk a little All-Star game. Actually, let's do a little red carpet first, because that was before the All-Star game. I had a thought, and it relates to MLB's power couple of Livvy Dunne and Paul Skeens. We'll start there. If you follow at MLB on Instagram, there was 5 posts during All-Star Week about their relationship. I think they're pushing that a little too hard. I understand from MLB's perspective that if you're sitting there, you're watching the NFL and Taylor and Travis, and you're like, well, why don't we have one of those? And then you have something in the same vein. I won't go as far as to say it's like the same kind of thing, because they're not on that same level of fame. Yeah, it's Taylor and Travis Jr. Exactly. It's a great way of looking at it. The NFL, the Taylor and Travis one doesn't even bother me anymore, because she's like the biggest celebrity on earth and he's the greatest tight end of all time. So it kind of makes sense that they would be predominantly featured on stuff because they're dating. But Livy and Paul Skeens, I don't want to say not post them at all because that would be like asinine to like think like that. But the amount that we're getting of them is a little excessive. If you look at the comments on all of the posts of them, it's always like, we didn't ask for this. Why are we seeing? There's 3 in one day of them.
Yep.
I would be curious to know because obviously they're doing it because they want the TikTok demo. They want the younger 15 to 24-ish age people who are fans of her to become fans of baseball. But I would love to see if their posting of Livy and Paul actually results in people becoming fans of the sport. I want to see somebody who's 15 years old with floppy hair say, you know what? I'm turning on the Detroit Tigers and White Sox are playing at 105 today on a Wednesday. I want to see if that actually translates from Livy's fit check to day game AL Central baseball. Then I will change my tune.
Yeah, I would love to know what that number is. Maybe 3 people in all of the world choosing. Because I think what's interesting is we give it the Taylor Travis comp. I'm just thinking about this in my head. Taylor Swift, like the MLB or the NFL, when she like started coming to all the games and that whole thing blew up, there was a very direct like Swifties being like, okay, I'm watching football now, or like Swifties with their dad, and they're just like, I'm sitting watching like my dad's explain all that stuff. Like we were making fun of the NFL for posting them all the time, but like that was real. That was real that their numbers were going up, that people were paying attention to the sport. I completely agree with you that I just don't think that's the same for Livy Dunn and Paul Skeens. Maybe the MLB is trying to have that be something, but I don't know that, Livy Dunn's fan base has, that her fan base, her TikTok followers, that they don't care at all about baseball. And I wouldn't, Paul Skeens is a different story because he's, locked in on pitching 24/7. He's no Instagram, no TikTok, no nothing. But yeah, I definitely do think it was a bit much. It felt like they were really, really trying to make it Travis and Taylor when the reason that Travis and Taylor worked was because, she had this whole fan base that was literally starting to watch football because of her. And I think the one interesting thing I'm trying to compare it in my head now is to Kate Upton and Justin Verlander. So I'm curious how much they posted her because I think about like when they were first dating and he made the All-Star games, seems like it was a lot. And now it's not as much, but I feel like that would be more the interesting couple to kind of compare the two.
My brain also thought along the JV Kate Upton lines because that was a big deal when they first got together because she was this like international supermodel, famous. You say the words Kate Upton, everybody knows who that is. I don't know if Livy Dunn's like they have a thing called like a Q rating for celebrities. I don't know what hers is, but it basically says how famous somebody is. I don't know maybe in that demo of people of like the 15 to 21-year-old people, maybe she's getting high ranks for that, but yeah, I don't know. I think baseball fans are a little bit different. And that's such a great point about the Taylor Swift comp, like the Swifties, because that's a fan base that is like very like they'll follow along with what she does religiously, and that's awesome. So if because Taylor's into football and is in the box cheering and all this stuff, Swifties will be like, hey, let me check this out. I don't know if TikTok people are going to say, let me watch a Pirates game now because Livy's boyfriend's pitching. I think that's something MLB wants, but I would need to see some data.
Yeah, and I think the best way for me to like phrase that and think about this is that like it's not saying anything about Livy, like who her fan base, who she is, her followers. I think it's more so credit to Taylor Swift and how devoted her follower base is that, just because she's dating Travis Kelce now, NFL ratings are going to go up like crazy. And I just don't think that exists anywhere else.
No, and look at Travis's podcast. Travis's podcast is the number one sports podcast now because, I don't want to say he didn't have fans before, but I think he definitely got pushed over the top by the Swifties tuning in to see what, Taylor's boyfriend's up to on the pod with his quirky brother, Jason. I think that was a lot of it. But yeah, if you follow MLB on Instagram, it was a tough couple days for just seeing baseball content because you definitely saw a lot of Livy. What was the one, the captions on these things are first All-Star game for Paul Skeens, job well done. Dunne. Skeens scoreless inning and Livy Dunn loves it. So also on the broadcast, they did that too. You had like Joe Davis, like, and there's in his broadcaster voice, like, and there's Livy Dunn. It's like, oh God, what are we doing?
Yeah, and it sucks too for him because I mean what he is doing is so ridiculously incredible. You know, to go from first overall pick to what less than a year later starting the All-Star game, like he deserves all this attention and praise. And not that she doesn't, but the focus on all those posts seems like it's on her when it should be on him.
They collabed on a account that interviews people on a red carpet. Not Paul wasn't even in that one. The MLB collabed with one. It was like some other account that interviews celebrities, and it was just like it was just her. So I was like, I get if they're together because Paul's the best pitcher in baseball, but that the solo one, I don't know, it was weird. All right, that was the first thing I saw. Let's do some All-Star game stuff. I'll let you start. What kind of stood out to you about the Midsummer Classic that you kind of wrote down and took note of?
Yeah, so I'll say the first thing that jumped out to me was Justin. Were you aware that this All-Star game was in Texas? Because it took me a couple of seconds of watching it to figure it out. I thought that the introductions having all the guys wear cowboy hats and then hand them to a kid to then run down the line with them, surrounded by guys with lassos and all this Texas stuff. Probably one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen in my life. I'm talking about it, so I guess in that respect it worked. But I mean, that it just jumped out to me how much the entire weekend they were cramming Texas down your throat.
We both saw this tweet where it's like how MLB views all 30 million Texans, and it was like a guy on a horse in front of a Whataburger. Yeah, I mean, I don't remember an All-Star game leaning into a city and region as much as this one did for Texas and Cowboy stuff. Maybe it's because it's such an easy, like you put some boots and a hat on and that's kind of it. I don't know if you're like going to Cincinnati and you're just like, I don't remember them being like, here's Skyline Chili. Like, I don't know if there was that much of a 1-for-1 like thing that you could use for that, but God, yeah, they really beat you over the head with the Cowboy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like it seemed, and this is a little different, but it seemed like everyone on the red carpet was wearing cowboy boots and a cowboy hat, which, that's their stylist, their PR team, whatever. Like that seems like the most it should have been, but to give like, oh my God, like this kid's walking out with Shohei, here's a cowboy hat. Like that was ridiculous to me. Like I just didn't think that was necessary at all. And like kind of honestly took away from the coolness of like the intros to the All-Star game, which would be it's a pretty cool moment. And instead of like fires or flames or dancers, they just got a guy twirling a lasso like that. I mean, imagine being that guy and they're like, yeah, listen, you're going to be a side, background dancer for the All-Star game. Oh, cool. What do you need me to do? Well, dance all around. Am I like giving high fives? No, just get a lasso. Just go around.
Dude,
you throw it in? No,
just doing that.
They must have been. Yeah, I mean that's a crazy workout. It must have been a tiring next day for those people.
They should have had the intro that the Cubs had on opening day a couple years ago, where it was like the saddest fire things as the people were walking out. Like that's what they should have had. Yeah, that. Yeah, I don't know. I also like my TikTok algorithm.
And let them go down like that kind of thing. I mean,
there's on a horse.
Yeah, if you're gonna lean into it, like do it. Put them on a horse and have them come down, or get have the lasso guy lasso Shohei and then bring him out. Or I don't know. I mean, you get weird with it. It's just like, oh, it's Texas. It's Texas.
Yeah,
get them barbecuing. I don't know. Like I'm not a Texas guy. I've never really been there, but I'm sure there's other interesting things they could have done than just a cowboy hat.
That's classic MLB for you. Yeah, my TikTok algorithm, I don't know if yours has just been like MLB All-Star game introductions from like 15, 20 years ago. I'll sit and watch all of them. It was like the 2007 NL All-Star team or whatever, and it was just like All-Star, Hall of Famer, All-Star. It's like, damn, this is fun. That's what I missed. But yeah, the cowboy hat and the cowboy stuff was a little bit much.
Yeah, my algorithm's not that. It's not the intros. Mine is the sitting down, the videos of the manager telling the players that they made the All-Star game, which credit was out and about this year. There was a ton of great ones. That's something that will always get me.
One thing I had written down was everybody, again, this is another PR media thing that everybody on Earth was talking about. Oh my God, what if Paul Skeens faced Aaron Judge? That was the biggest storyline leading into the All-Star game was the best power hitter, the hardest throw-in, best starting pitcher. Oh my God, what would happen? It would be a matchup for the ages. And then it was one pitch and he grounded out. So that was very baseball.
That's baseball season. I mean, it's right there. Like there's one thing I will give credit to the MLB All-Star game for is that matchup when Judge comes up against Skeens, like that's a legit real matchup. It's not like the NBA where someone's guarding someone and they're not really playing defense. So the NFL, where like no one's tackling anybody. But the MLB All-Star game, like there's no half speed. You can't not go all out. That's the one thing where like that was really cool about the Soto at bat before it was money, and definitely really cool. I mean, Soto on Monday, I was on MLB Network and said I'm going to make sure Judge gets an at bat against Skeens, and then went out there, walks, points right to Judge on the dugout saying I got you. I mean, I thought that was a cool moment. Just kind of ended anticlimactically.
Oh yeah, it's very, very on brand. I think the best matchup though was Mason Miller. Mason Miller versus Ohtani, Mason Miller versus Trey Turner. That was the one that didn't get hyped up like Paul and Aaron Judge,
Yeah.
but it should have been, because Mason Miller, he set the record for the hardest pitch in All-Star game history, 103.6, struck out Shohei and Turner. And I saw a stat, he's the third rookie pitcher to earn a win in the All-Star game. The previous two were in 1954 and 1947. So Mason Miller stole the show for me, and he picked up the win and got a 104-mile-an-hour fastball.
Yeah, honestly, it's pretty cool that they got him in there early as opposed to like pitching the 8th or the 9th. So we got to actually face Shohei and Turner and Harper and all the big stars. I mean, the pitch that he struck Trey Turner out on was just ridiculous. I mean, we like fawn over this guy because he throws 104 miles an hour, which in and of itself is ridiculous. But he dropped a slider in there at 88 that literally just like caught the top outside corner of the zone. And I don't know how anyone hits that. It's like a perfectly painted pitch that just dropped right in there.
Mason Miller is like one of the best kept secrets in baseball. I don't like, again, it's because he's in Oakland. It's because he's not, if he was on the Dodgers, I think he would be shoved down everybody's throats. But because he's in Oakland A and everything that's going on with them, like people just forget about him. But we on this podcast, and I think as baseball media members, as we are, I think we need to do a better job, because that was the thing that should have been hyped up. That should have been on the McAfee show before, not Judge and Skeens, because that was a big letdown. What else did you have written down?
Let me check my list. One thing I got here, shout out to Jarren Duran. I mean, there's a guy who's done everything right his whole career and gets a huge moment in All-Star Game MVP. I mean, I think there was a funny interview with him afterwards where he's saying he's never, pimped a home run like that in his life, the big one he hit in the 5th or the 6th inning, something like that. Great moment for him. Very happy for him. He's a guy who's been through a lot in his life and seemingly is turning a quarter and starting to break out. And, hopefully that's a moment that we can look back on and say, Jarren Duran, that's when he really arrived into the big stage. Because I feel like even though he was, I don't know what his stats are off the top of my head, but I know they're really good. He's still a guy that like not everyone's talking about, but he's kind of flying under the radar. He was 16th in fan voting in the AL in the outfield, which is ridiculous to me. He hit 4 guys in the Guardians who I've never, seen before, which is what credit to the Guardians for that. We're ahead of him in the fan voting. So hopefully, this was his moment for him and he arrived, and then all smooth sailing going up from there.
Jarren Duran, I didn't realize him and I are the same age. He's 27. This is his 4th year in the big league. So he's had a very slow incremental rise to where he's at.
Yeah.
I pulled the stats up: 27 doubles, 10 triples. Dude's batting 284. Like this is a legitimate star. And it's cool to see because I don't know if you remember a couple years ago, kind of like the most infamous Jarren Duran play I think people will kind of recognize him from was when he lost the ball up in the outfield and he's just looking around I think that was the game they lost 28-5 or whatever. That's what I think of when I think of Jarren Duran, but now he's like one of the best hitters in baseball.
Yeah, he's props to him. He's flipped the script. He's kind of putting that moment behind him, and it seems like he's here to stay.
Yeah. No, that's very cool that he had his moment, because that's such a cool thing. I don't know if you saw this, but the mic'd up from the All-Star game, kind of a mixed bag. And I'm on the record. I think one of my bigger videos on TikTok was just like, stop putting microphones on people, which people on TikTok obviously did not enjoy that. But I think the cool part was the Phillies infield all being mic'd up. I thought that played really well. Those guys were all kind of funny. It was like Trey Turner dove and made a great play at shortstop, got up and immediately started complaining about his belt buckle or whatever that flashy belt they all had to wear. So that was kind of fun. So that was an instance where it was cool. Where it was not cool, I don't know if you saw, was Tarek Skubal had a mic on the mound, and the first thing he says was, "You got to turn it down. It's blowing my ears out," or whatever. So like, it's just that there's a lot of quirks with it. I think they were hoping for like Scooble to be like, I don't know, in other All-Star games, pitchers were being fun and quirky. Like, I'm going to throw him a fastball. Like, they want him to like interact and be kind of more. I think Tarek didn't even say a word. I think he just kind of like grunted a couple times, and that was kind of it. So that was like an instance where I don't know who was doing the research or talking to people before that, but Tarek was mad the whole day because he wasn't the starter. He was on the red carpet and he was not happy. He was getting interviewed and he was like, I want to be the starter. And then you stick a mic on him and he's just like, my ears hurt. And then he didn't say anything. So it was kind of a mixed bag, but I'll give them a little credit for some of it. But the Scooble thing was ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't think pitchers are the people to have mic'd up just because they need to be so locked in and focused the entire time. Similar, like we don't normally see guys wearing them when they're in there at bat, but in the field, like that's when I think we get some good content, and it's nice to see like guys, interact with their teammates and like just that kind of behind the scenes of just guys being dudes back there.
Yeah.
Another one that was I don't know if you mentioned or saw it, but the Judge and Soto when they were both mic'd up and Judge is fawning over how amazing Otani is, and 2 seconds later he hits a bomb. Like those kind of moments are really, really cool. But yeah, I don't think I think that we got to do away with pitchers on the mound because there's a saying in baseball that pitchers are weird.
Yeah.
And it's because when they're on the mound, pitchers are often just like locked in, like psychotic. Like being Hendricks, when he did his, and he was cursing at guys on the mound, and I'm sure MLB didn't love that.
God damn it.
But yeah, like keep it in the field. Let the guys interact and have fun. Don't force anything. Sorry,
that's
such a great on me.
That's such a great one about the Liam Hendricks, because like that's an instance where like we probably shouldn't have had a mic on him. Like he's a very intense guy. I think I don't know, I can't remember who it was, but I'm pretty sure there's an All-Star game where it was like, yeah, the pitcher was wearing the mic and John Smoltz is like, oh, I think you should throw him a slider here or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. That part's weird. So I don't know. They're getting better with it. I think the Sunday Night Baseball ones are kind of hit or miss, but really the All-Star game is the game, I think, to have the most amount of mics on people because it is an exhibition still. But here's a fun game for you. There should be a drinking game where every time a reporter or a broadcaster asks the question, how much fun is this? How much fun are you having? Or how exciting is this? I think you should have to take a shot because that's all I heard from every reporter broadcaster over the week was just like, hey, insert player, how much fun is this?
It's a dangerous game. You're asking for trouble with that one. Yeah, I mean that's every reporter's go-to. To be honest, if I was a player and they just, how fun is this? Yes, it's fun. I don't know what you say to that, but
we as baseball journalists, broadcasters, media members, we have to do a better job of when we have access to these people and you have a platform, you have to do a better job. You got to give me something better than how much fun is this? You got to come loaded with something. I don't know what you're going to ask them about. Google them beforehand or something, but on the field before the game or whatever, like Tom Verducci, like, hey, Marcus Semien, how much fun is this? Like, dude, come on. Like we got to do better. I don't know. Maybe there's a time constraint factor that is playing in here where it's like, I have 15 seconds with him, but we got to clean that up. It's getting bad.
Yeah, we got to replace that with a better like stock line instead of how much fun is this? What's your favorite part? What's been going on? Oh, anything.
Yeah, I don't know. Like these people go to like Syracuse and Northwestern and all of these journalism schools or whatever. You can't ask them a better question than that. I don't know. So that also is kind of a long running gripe I have with these kind of events. But yeah, I think if you had to take a shot every time you heard how much fun is this, I think you'd be in the ER.
Yeah, maybe the best way to enjoy the home run derby.
Yeah. Also, here's something. MLB's got to clean up the introductions. Did you see the home run derby? I mean, okay, everybody's obviously talking about the anthem, which the singer has checked herself into rehab. So I hope she gets herself clean. But like they had the guy from SNL up there doing the intros and it was awkward. And I think they had Pete Alonso 1,000 feet from the camera when he came out. So PR 101, I guess, but we gotta figure out these like pregame hype televised things because they're so bad.
Yeah, I always feel bad for the players when they do that like close up of like they're trying to, the players just standing there like trying to look serious or like look off into the distance and they kind of just get the camera like all close up because what do you do with that in that scenario? Do you like smile and wave, or they want you to do the fist like it's a face off and you're boxing. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's definitely some room for improvement there for sure.
God, it was so bad. Okay, I had one last thing that I had written down. It's kind of more of just like a broad somebody who was involved in the whole week thing. Did you have anything else, or did you want to end with that one?
That sounds good to me.
Okay. So I saw a tweet that I wanted to get your take on. It's from Al Scott. He said, the fact that MLB doesn't do a better job of marketing Bobby Witt Jr. is beyond me. He's the most complete player in baseball, and it was his baseball savant where it was like red is good, and like all of his stuff is red, like all of his stats and values and stuff. It got me thinking, why haven't we seen more of Bobby Witt Jr.? He was in the Derby. He's one of the best players in baseball. Is it the market he plays in? Is it I don't know. What do you think is behind people not getting enough BWJ?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have two things that I think might be the reason. You're right. One, market. Kansas City is just not, no matter how good they're playing, no matter how fun they are to watch, it's not one of the biggest markets in baseball. And just because of that, there's just gonna be less eyeballs on them. And, hate it or love it, that's just the way our media system is designed. And two, I don't know that he's had that big postseason breakout moment. Well, I mean, I know that he hasn't been in the playoffs yet. But I think that's something this year, I would really love for him to have that moment where he gets to host a wild card series in Kansas City and do that whole, hey, everyone come to my spot, and puts on a show for a weekend in the national world, gets to see how good he is. Cause believe me, he is incredible. I mean, he was one of my sleeper MVP picks this year. I will say, funny side note about Bobby Witt. He was in my recruiting class when I was in high school, and he was the number one player in our class literally the entire way through. So I was like in 8th grade, like looking up, like, oh, maybe I'm going to be the number 10 player in PG or PBR or whatever. And it was always Bobby Witt Jr. for maybe 8 years in a row. But yeah, so believe me, I know how incredible he is and how funny he is to watch. So, I hope this year he gets that big postseason moment. They're playing really well and they keep going strong. And then maybe by next year, he is a little bit more the face of baseball.
That's a great point about just like the team he's been on has been bad. So last year they had 56 wins. This rookie year, he had 65 wins. So you're right. We're not getting the chance to see him in the postseason, which I think would help elevate his standing in baseball. Where are the Royals at in a wild card? The Royals are 2 games out of a wild card.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they have Baseball Reference 49% chance to make the playoffs. That's pretty good. So we might have a chance to see a divisional round or a wild card round, just some magic from BWJ. Because
even before that, get hot in August or September and carry your team there. I mean, like even that would be a cool thing for the sport, and would gain him a little bit more notoriety. It's just it's tough when you're winning 60 games a year for people to really notice you.
Yeah, in a media market, I don't even know what Kansas City's is, but I can't imagine it's that big. Yeah, you're right. It's just, I think the Derby might have helped a little bit in terms of making it to the finals, but I don't know. I think this is something that baseball needs to work on, because I'm pretty sure I've seen interviews with Bobby Witt where like he's a funny guy, he's young, he's charismatic. I feel like MLB, if they pick people to promote, they're doing a good job, I think, with Adley. Adley is out there on everything. He's on social, he's active, he's making TikToks on the MLB account. Like, I think they're doing a good job for him, but then his 2019, the guy who's picked right after him, Bobby Witt, is just like that meme where he's just standing in the corner.
Yeah. I wonder if he was if the number 1 pick and Adley was number 2, if he would be a little bit more, same situation with everything. Obviously, they're both all world talents, but if he was number 1, just to have that prestige, like right now, we don't hear much about Dylan Cruz. I know he's been doing a little bit worse, but it's all about Paul Skeens, who was number 1 pick.
Also excellent. Yeah. Cause Dylan Cruz is, I think he's in AAA for the Nationals, but I haven't really seen any of the highlights or hype. Yeah.
Yeah. He'll be up this year. I think he's been struggling a little bit, and he's also got James Woods, who's kind of outfield prospect for the Nationals too. But, it's that same old story. Peyton Manning, Ryan Leaf,
Yep.
Andrew Luck, RG3. Was he the other one? RG3? He was RG3.
Yeah. That was the same year. I want more Bobby Witt. I don't know what we got to do. I don't know if the Royals people got to start making some TikToks to get the word out or something. I don't know. We got to start a grassroots movement to promote this guy a little bit more because he's so much fun.
Yeah.
Okay, that was awesome. I think, it feels good. I feel like we haven't done one of these in like a month or two. I don't know. It feels good to get back on the saddle and
nice check-in.
Yeah, exactly. So I have an interview coming up that I'm very proud of. It is with MLB veteran relief pitcher Tony Barnette. It's a fantastic hour-long conversation. He was in the minor leagues. He went to Japan for 5 or 6 years. He became like a Japanese All-Star. Comes back to the Rangers at age 32 and pitches for a couple years and has like a 2 ERA and is like a dominant like later inning arm for them. He's got a new book coming out that everybody should check out. So here is my conversation with Tony Barnette. Enjoy. We interrupt this episode to bring you a word from the official sponsor of Not For Long Media and the Breaking Bats podcast, the original Fudge Kitchen. It is a staple of the Jersey Shore with 6 locations in Cape May, Wildwood, North Wildwood, Stone Harbor, and Ocean City. The original Fudge Kitchen makes all of their fudge in store, guaranteeing a delicious product, so stop by and let them know that Not For Long Media and Breaking Bats sent you. Check them out online at fudgekitchens.com as they are shipping fudge and sweet treats all across the country. Now back to the episode. All right, we are now joined by a very special guest, former MLB and NPB pitcher Tony Barnette. He is the subject of the new book, A Baseball Gaijin, Chasing a Dream to Japan and Back. Tony, it's great to see you. We're going to start with the book at the top. First, can you explain what does a baseball gaijin mean? What is it? What is that?
Well, I mean, baseball is pretty self-explanatory, but a gaijin is the Japanese term for, I think like it kind of, don't quote me here. I think it kind of translates towards a foreign helper, and I think that's just kind of like the word that it's used. Nihonjin is like it's the term for a local because like they say it like Nihon, which is like Nippon. Nippon is how they actually say Japan. So Nippon Professional Baseball League is the Japanese professional baseball league. They don't call it Japan. It is Nippon to the people in Japan. So I think like jin is like the kind of like one of the terms for people. So Nihonjin is like Japanese person. Gaijin is like a foreign person. I'm not a fluent speaker by any means, but that's my understanding of what a gaijin is. And a gaijin is basically any foreigner that goes to Japan to play baseball. We get that gaijin tag.
Nice. Yeah, I was just telling you the other member of this podcast, Brian O'Grady, played for the Saitama Seibu Lions a couple years ago. So just the process of him going over there and coming on the podcast and talking about his experience I'm a little bit familiar with the Japanese game, but it's I feel like I learn more all the time. So we'll start with the process of the book. Like, what was the process to get this book made, and like how excited are you for people to read your story?
It's a fun process because it started in 2008. Aaron Fishman, the author, for a college project, he reached out to me for an interview. He was a communication school in college, and I just was one of the players that he reached out to that happened to just say, yeah, I'll let you interview me. Did that. I was in AA Mobile at the time. So it started then. And as I kept playing, he kind of either kept having projects to come up with. And then I went to Japan, which he was interested in. And so he wrote some more, and I did a blog for him for a little bit, kind of documenting my experiences at the time. The blog came to an end. It was kind of quick. He ended up moving on away from the college projects that he was working on. He uncovered the NBA. But as I kept playing, he kept asking questions. Eventually, that saw me come back to the big leagues in 2016 with Texas, and the story got a little more interesting. So he kept writing, and I think it was probably right around 2018, 2019, he was like, I'm going to turn this into a book. And I was like, I was nervous because I was like, I don't know, Aaron. I was like, I don't know if it's going to, work. I was like, I don't know how special of a story it really is. I'm like, I'm no different than any other guy that straps on a jersey and just goes to work and, tries to win every day. But he was adamant in his pursuit to write this story, to put all of his work that all of his interviews that he's had since 2008. And then he just went on the adventure of interviewing family, friends, people that I played with, and people that I was currently playing with in Texas. And, he ended up with enough material to cover almost 400 pages. And so it's something that's really cool for me to see myself on the cover of a book. It's neat for my family to see, and just to kind of document the journey of going from minor leagues to Japan and then back to the big leagues and finding a little bit of success there. So it's a neat thing for me to sit there and be able to read through and look back at almost, again, and it brings up a lot of stuff that I forgot, stuff that just happens on the mundane of everyday ball players that I'm like, man, like that was kind of crazy. It was a neat time. So I'm excited for it. I'm excited. I've gotten good responses back from it, and people are excited to have it in their hands, reading through it to get a more in detailed view of what it was like for me to go from Japan to the States.
Right. Yeah. It's such a unique story, which it's so cool that you have that like documented and you can like pass it down for like your kids and your kids' kids to like learn about this, because we'll talk about it here, but just like, it's a very unique tale that, you don't really see often in baseball. But you kind of already mentioned my next question was just going to be like the process of having this made, like the emotions that it brought up. Like what were you feeling? Was there things that like you've forgotten about, but you remembered in the process of writing the book? And you're like, dang, that was cool.
A lot of it, I remember having a hard time with asking the question. I was like, Aaron, am I worthy of this? Because like I've played with guys and I know guys where their stories would rival mine. I could rattle off a few. Like it's just, I was like, Aaron, are people going to be invested in this? Are people really going to want to dig into this? Am I truly worthy of having a book written about me? Because like I said, like at the end of the day, I'm really not much different than any other guy that throws a jersey on and gives it his all. There's stories and careers that will obviously they rival mine. I never made an All-Star game. I'm not heading to the Hall of Fame. Never got. There's just amazing ball players that I played with and have come before and will come after me that, like I said, their stories will rival mine. There's guys like, for instance, fellow Ranger I played with, Jake Diekman, watching him go through his journey of having UCL, ulcerative colitis, and just doing the things that he did from childhood to now and he's pitched more than 10 years in the big league and been a prominent reliever. I feel like guys like that who Trey Mancini's one, these guys that have overcome astronomical odds in order to beat physical ailments, situations in their own personal life to be all-star caliber baseball players. Those stories are fantastic for me to just be a part of and get to compete with and against those guys. So that was one question I had when we were writing the book. But, it is just kind of it's a humbling experience for somebody to say, you know what, Tony, like your story is unique. Your story should be heard by other people, and I want to write it. So I'm really honored that he did. I'm honored that he put in so many sleepless hours and so many years of hard work to make it come true.
No doubt. Yeah, no, I'm excited to read it. I'm excited for people to have the experience of going through it and reading it. Cause yeah, you're right. We'll get into it now. I wanted to take it way back because I think the first thing that I saw that really kind of jumped off the page for me was you're one of only 12 big leaguers born in the state of Alaska. How does it feel being a part of such an exclusive subsect of the game?
Again, like outside of college summer ball, baseball doesn't really get played in depth in Alaska. To add on to that, I've done my homework on the Alaskan baseball players. Not one of us, not a single one of those 12 played high school baseball in Alaska. We all had to leave the state in order to pursue that dream. You have as much of a chance of coming from Alaska as you do from I think West Germany on making it to the big leagues. I think there's been 11 players from there. So it's a neat, fun fact. I hope that Alaskans are proud that another member, obviously Kurt Schilling's probably, he's the top of the top when it comes to guys that came from the Great North. But it is cool. It's just a fun fact for me because I did obviously, I left Alaska when I was 4 years old. So for all intents and purposes, I did my growing up in Washington State, where baseball is a little bit more prominent. It gets done a lot more times of the year. But it's a fun fact for me as being one of the 12 that come from Alaska.
Yeah, you're right. Kurt Schilling is the one that I always think of. Just he probably carries the torch of that's
just like when you came down to Arizona junior college, you went to Yavapai. So I think as Alaskans, when we like sports, we know in our hearts that we need to get to warmer climates.
You mentioned it, but yeah, you played at Arizona State. I looked it up, and you played under now Brewers manager Pat Murphy.
Yes.
And I was reading about just his managerial style because I've seen what he does in Milwaukee now, and it's awesome. He's crushing it. But from a personal and baseball development standpoint, guys have always said that he's done so much for them. What was your experience like playing for Coach Murphy?
You'll read a little bit about that in the book, and in all fairness, Pat has a long history of. I mean, he was a manager at Arizona State, so he has a long history of dealing with top tier baseball players, and there's guys that speak very highly of him. Pat and I had I'm probably one of the players that he butted heads with. I went from junior college into Arizona State, and I struggled mightily. Um, there was there was just, I think, a conflict in personalities, and I question a lot to these days of whether or not he was just singling me out or if he really was putting my back to the wall to see how I would react. So it's one of those things where me and Pat, we definitely had our battles. I don't remember me and him having many friendly conversations, but I think a lot of that was in due to his style, his in-your-face style, and me struggling as a Division One ball player coming from junior college. But in the end, I ended up pitching very well for him, and he ended up giving me an opportunity there in my senior year. But I also believe it was something that I forced and something that I earned myself. We could go into great detail about that experience because I think it's unique, but it's written a little bit about in the book about just kind of how Pat and I were for to better words, like we were kind of like a water and oil situation. Um, so I think there was one night where I'd had enough, and I wrote him an email, and he never sent me anything back. It was just kind of like okay, and then from there, like there was a springboard of me just sticking my head down and trying to throw as hard as humanly possible, hoping that somebody would see me, somebody would I'd either light up a radar gun to get to the professional game or blow out for I was all in at that point. I'm going to throw as hard as I possibly can. Either I'm getting drafted or I'm blowing out. It's professional ball or bust, and it was my senior year. So you'll read a little bit about it in the book. But yeah, I mean he strikes a chord with guys that is different than what other managers bring. He definitely has his own coaching style, and I haven't had the opportunity to work with him in a professional capacity, only at the Division One capacity. And from my experience, all Division One coaches are a little bit crazy, and you kind of have to be when you're dealing with 18 to 21-year-olds that think they all know everything, and we're in that state of young manhood where we're the all-knowing. Older people don't know anything, but he's risen through the ranks as a manager and as a coach through a few organizations, and now he's gotten his chance to manage at the big league level, and he's having a ton of success doing it.
It's so funny you mentioned like hard coaching at the D1 level. I've heard other guys on this podcast talk about, yeah, you're right, the kind of the more adversarial relationships between the coaches and players. But I feel like a lot of them have always said about that it's just been like at that stage of my life, 18 to 22, like I needed that kind of like tough coaching to kind of help me become the baseball player I am today. Did you find that coaching style like resonated with you? I mean, obviously you went on to have a lengthy baseball career after that, but yeah, how do you see the managerial styles at the D1 level? Like, is that something that usually works out in the long run when guys are coaching like that?
I think it makes or breaks guys. It really does. I had a man named Clint Myers at Central Arizona, and he's probably one of the. I mean, I love Clint. He's probably one of the best baseball coaches I've ever had as far as managing people. He was a fantastic softball coach as well after he won a national title at junior college with Central Arizona. Before that, he was a softball coach for Central Arizona, won a ton of games. Then he went on to Arizona State, Auburn, and took both of those women's teams to the College World Series. And I think he won at least one along the way. He's just one of those guys that doesn't know the word losing. He steps onto any kind of court or field of that matter. I think he's going to win something. But yeah, I think the styling of certain coaches like the Augie Garridos, Pat Murphy's, I think they make or break players. I know for myself, my situation with Pat, I had met that make or break moment, and obviously I came out on the other side of that. But some of that in your face style coaching, and just I think some guys aren't built for it.
Yeah.
Don't handle it well. And, it's just, I know guys like Dustin Pedroia and Andre Ethier, those guys speak very highly of him. It's a style of coaching that you're going to love or you're going to hate. And there's really no in between when it comes to Pat. I still, at 40 years old to this day, kind of question certain things of what he was trying to get at with me. But, you know, in the end, it worked out. In the end, you know, no harm, no foul. But, you know, he, again, you know, kudos to him for dealing with everything that he's done with his life, and, you know, met the, risen to being a Major League Baseball manager, which is no easy feat to meet, and he's having success. So, you know, best of luck to him, and, you know, just kudos to him for doing that.
Wow. So you mentioned just like trying to throw as hard as possible. What was the scouting report for you when you were coming out of college, when you finally get drafted into pro ball? Like what was the kind of pitcher you were back then?
Well, I had some success there towards the end of my senior year. Ended up getting drafted in the 10th round by the Diamondbacks. And then when I went to rookie ball with the Diamondbacks, that was where I had the most fortunate opportunity of working with Mel Stottlemyre Jr. He was my pitching coach. He's still a pitching coach in the big leagues. Obviously, he comes from a great baseball family with his dad and his brother Todd. You know, with Mel Sr. Well, obviously he's well decorated with the Yankees. But Mel Jr. really taught me what it meant to be a professional baseball pitcher. So at the time, coming up through the minor leagues, I remember, you know, I wasn't a very hard thrower, though. I was still, like, you know, as a starter, I was 91, 92, you know, pretty much your average right-handed reliever, 6'1", 180 pounder, at the time, 165 pounds, 91, 92, but I commanded the ball well. I threw a lot of strikes, did not shy away from anybody. I hated walking guys. Having Mel help form me into a pro was, I think, instrumental in my development. So, like, as I went through the minor leagues, it was like, Tony's going to come at you. He's going to throw strikes. He's going to challenge you, and he's going to throw his off speed for strikes. I think that was I remember coming up and I was like, you know, John Garland was a guy that I had in my mind. I was like, you know what? I was trying to sell the Diamondbacks. Look, I can be the next John Garland. As a starting pitcher, I can go 13-12 with the best of them, and I can log 200 plus innings. Just give me the chance to throw. Let me keep throwing. Let me keep throwing. So that was kind of like, I remember, like, trying to be real with myself, you know, not like, oh, I'm not going to go out there and try to be Nolan Ryan, because I'm not you know, I don't bring 98, 100 miles an hour. But what do I do have? What am I capable of? I'm capable of throwing my off speed for strikes in any count that I'm confident that I can throw it for strikes. I'm confident that I can move the fastball around and sink it and cut it. So give me the opportunity to take the mound. I'm going to give you a chance to win. It may not be the most electric thing you've ever seen, but at the end of the day, I kind of fashioned myself as saying, I'm going to give you 6, 7, 8 innings, and we're going to be in a spot where we're winning a baseball game. So I think that was kind of the scouting report. And then I remember reading some scouting reports that I wasn't supposed to get my hands on when I was playing around on some computers. And it's kind of looking to see, but, like, and it was just like, you know, there was a lot of doubt about me because I was, you know, undersized, didn't bring a lot of plus stuff to the table. But what I did lack, I believe, in stuff, I made up for in just my approach. And as you've probably talked to ball players, approach is just about damn near everything when it comes to this game. And if you have a poor approach, you're going to struggle. But my approach was, I don't care who you are, I'm gonna bring the fight to the table. And, you know, again, when you get that make or break kind of mentality, you know, hitters will, or pitchers in that, for that matter too, they'll break. And I won a lot of battles with just being able to try to be a bulldog and trying to get out there and just being aggressive.
I like that. It's also funny your comp back then was John Garland, because I remember, yeah, he's a very
that
solid.
was my own comp for my own self.
Yeah.
You know, that was me comparing myself to somebody at the big league level. Like, who can I fashion myself to? You know,
good arm.
Right. You know, obviously coming up, I loved, like, guys like Mark Mulder and Tim Hudson, you know, guys like that. And like that trio or that quad with Rich Harden, Barry Zito, Mark Mulder, and Tim Hudson in Oakland. I really liked watching those guys. And, you know, so I kind of liked watching Tim Hudson, but still, like, he threw harder and he had that split. But that's when I started to develop a split. I was like, hey, I see guys like David Cohn, Tim Hudson with these nasty splits. I'm going to try that. I'm going to keep throwing that thing, even though people were saying, oh, it's going to hurt your elbow. And I was like, I don't think I throw hard enough for that, boys. You know?
Did you ever meet John Garland to tell him this?
No, I didn't. You know, I didn't. Actually, I never did. But, like, he was with the Diamondbacks. And I was a rookie, my very first spring training after Double-A. I went to spring training. And so I remember, you know, rubbing shoulders with them a little bit, but I was still young and green. It was just like that, you know, be seen but not heard mentality. Randy Johnson was in the clubhouse at the time. It's like, yeah, just stay out of there, everybody. You know.
Yeah, especially when he's there too. Yeah, it's just the
Right.
intimidating
I think
presence.
Orlando Hudson was also on the team, and it was one thing like when they talk about O-Dog, they're like, as a rookie, as a young guy, like don't get caught in the way, or else O-Dog will expose you.
I'm getting some, yeah, very fond memories of that era of baseball.
Yeah.
So when did Tokyo and Japanese baseball come into the picture? Because it's a very unique story, like we mentioned, just like not making your major league debut, but also having interest from that league for yourself. Like when did that all become sort of a thing?
That came a reality after AAA. I received a message from former reliever Bobby Korecki. He was on my AAA team that year. He's kind of up and down. Sends me a text message saying, "Hey Tony, I've got this Japanese scout. I've known him for a long time. He'd like to talk to you." And at the time, I was like, Japanese scout. I was like, man, that's kind of crazy. It wasn't even on my radar. So I was like, you know what? I'll hear anything out. It doesn't matter what you are. It doesn't matter what it is. I'll hear it. So he texted me, said, "Hey, I think we've got some interest from a Japanese team. Let me," and I was like, "Well, let me talk to my agent at the time, a guy named Dean Steinbeck, who's not in the game anymore." But long story short, those two met, who ended up being my agent, Don Nomura. He's the same agent that brought Nomo, and he's worked with countless other Asian American baseball players. And it's just so it came one night from a text message from Bobby Korecki, and then all of a sudden things got real. The team was like, the Yakult Swallows reached out. They're like, "We'd like to offer you a contract." And at first I was like, you know what? No, guys. The Rule 5 draft is coming up. I had a pretty good year in AAA, won 14 games, pitched a ton. I think I'm right there. I think I should get taken. I did not get taken. I was wrong, but luckily they were still at the table and they're like, "Do you still want to come?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "I think it's time. I don't want to go back to AAA." And the Diamondbacks were great about it. They wished me well out the door. They told me, they're like, "Hey, if you want to stay, we'd love to have you, but you're just not in our immediate plans right now." And as a ball player, that's all I've ever asked for, and just be straight up with me. They let me free, and next thing you know, I was on, like, I think it was January 26th. I was on a flight. I was on my first international flight to Tokyo, Japan.
What did they see in you that the Diamondbacks organization did? Like, what was the scouting report that the Japanese team was like, "There's a guy in AAA that we'd love to have"?
I think they saw the same thing the Diamondbacks saw. It's just I just didn't have. I wasn't in the immediate plan. I wasn't, as a starting pitcher or even like a long reliever at the time. I just wasn't what they were looking for to do. They even told me, they're like, "If guys get hurt, that's kind of where we see you. But if you want to go, like, we're not gonna hold you hostage. We're not gonna, keep you from pursuing your own goals." And so I think, Colt saw a starting pitcher, 26 years old, unprotected, that can throw strikes and go out there and compete, has an aggressiveness towards them. So my boss now, Michael Okamura, he's the same guy that brought me over. He's been in the same position for, I think, the last 30 years. He's been bringing foreigners over to Japan, having a lot of success with that. I think he just liked what he saw. He saw that I had a slide step, could control the running game. Showed a little bit of velocity, up there 93, 94 on a really good day. Had breaking balls that I could throw for strikes, and I was throwing a split style pitch at the time, which translates really well to Japan. So I think he saw the same thing everybody else did, but at the time the States just didn't have a spot for me, and they weren't. And I was just on the cusp of making it in, or possibly packing it in, and sure enough, that very next year, Kevin Towers came in with the Diamondbacks and took over the GM duties, and he kind of cleaned house. So I think at that time, I probably, just like a lot of my buddies that I came up with, they started that trek around the minor leagues of minor league free agency and bouncing from team to team. I think I would have met that same fate. So I kind of bet on myself to go to Japan and possibly, hopefully, come back one day, and bet on myself, and it worked out.
Yeah. I had a question, because you said you were 26 years old at that time, which,
Yes.
Take me through the mindset of a guy who's getting into his later 20s as a prospect, but hasn't made his debut yet. Is that kind of or is that in the back of your mind as you get older? You're like, I'm 25, now I'm 26. I still haven't are guys in the upper levels of the minors who are getting older and older? Is that a conscious thing that everybody's kind of thinking about?
I think it's got to be. I don't know how. I can't speak for them now, but I got, as a senior sign out of college, I already had that on my back of, I've got to move. Once again, Mel Stottlemyre Jr. pulled me aside going into A ball that 2007 spring training. It was right after rookie ball had a good year. Went into spring trainings. Mel pulled me aside and he was like, "Look, you had a good year, but you don't have time to screw around. Like you're 20, you're going to be 23 going into low A. You need to move. You don't have time to screw around." And like again, like I love Mel for that bluntness and that just being able to pull me aside and say, "This is what was expected of you at this point. You need to move." So he borderline just. I remember one day he pulled me into an office and he said, "Look, you're expendable." And like to be called expendable can be kind of hurtful, but in that context, I was like, I appreciate having somebody who's going to tell me exactly where I stand as a ball player, because truth is the only thing that can help you move forward. And so I think as I got older and I was like, man, I think I'm big league ready, which in hindsight, yes or no, I don't know. But luckily Japan was there to give me that opportunity. I struggled my very first year in Japan. Then they moved me to the bullpen that second year. And next thing you know, I'm stepping out in the ballpark in Arlington, saving runs for guys like Cole Hamels and Yu Darvish. And, just what an honor and just what a time to be alive.
Yeah. I had a question about that because I was reading about your first year in Japan. What was going on with the baseballs? They weren't all the same. There was like different baseballs on different days. What was that about?
For years, they had different teams had different contracts with different companies. So like one team had a contract with Zet and they used those baseballs. One team had a contract with Mizuno and they're using their baseballs. And there was like a couple of those floating around. And I just remember one day I'm throwing this entire bullpen getting ready for my next start. And all of a sudden I'm like 50, 60 pitches in and they'll go, "Oh, you're using the wrong ball." Well, I can't start over, So it was just the way that it had been done for as long as they had operated. So it wasn't until I think it was 2011 that next year that they Mizuno got the sole contract and they unified the baseball throughout the league. And some of the controversy with the baseball continued, but at least they went to one ball that everybody was throwing around.
That's wild. They all had like different feels and like tackiness and yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, they were similar in style. Obviously, it's still a baseball, but you could tell the difference when you picked up one ball compared to the other. And obviously, the core alignment would have been different. So the one ball's bouncier, one ball's not. One ball, imagine telling a Major League Baseball player, Max Scherzer, that he's got to use 3 different baseballs throughout the season. He would pitch a fit. And rightfully so.
Yeah.
Like as professionals, especially in this day and age, as professionals, we have a craft to hone, and we're expected by the fan base to go out there and be as perfect as close to perfect as we possibly can on a nightly basis. So you want something that's uniform in your hand or in your at the bat. So it was a wild time. They fixed it. Baseball's all unified now. It's just one ball getting used. So we don't got to worry about it anymore.
Besides dealing with that, your first year there, how did you kind of get acclimated to living in a new country? I think you said that was the first time you'd ever taken an international flight was to go over there. How did you kind of personally and professionally navigate that?
I mean, just by winging it, really. It really didn't set in until you kind of really give way to all of your old tendencies and habits of living and, driving in a car that was off the table. Now it's a subway culture for those that, never had it in the subway. Just the food availability is what they are, but then you learn pretty quickly that it's the food capital of the world and everything's good. It just really had me be jumping in both feet with the team and away from the field and just accepting where you're at in the moment and making the best of it, figuring it out and not losing your mind along the way. Because I remember I had really good teammates when I came in, Jamie D'Antona, former Diamondback, Aaron Guile, former Ranger and Yankee. And those guys, I remember joking with them and they were like, "You have till May to ask why," and I was like, "What do you mean?" And then sure enough, you kind of find yourself asking, "Well, why did we do this? Why do we do that? Why this?" And they're like, "You have till May." And then you need to like excommunicate it you just need to get it out of your vocabulary and just accept where you're at and accept that this is how it's going to be done. You're not going to change it. Nobody's going to change it. Just do your best and acclimate and just assimilate with the team and get in there with 2 feet. And so I'm lucky I had some mentors like them. It's cool because I still get to work with Aaron. He works alongside of me. So him and I have been working together for probably 13, 14 years now on and off the field. But yeah, so I mean, having good teammates always helps. Guys that have been there before and saying, look, man, there's a few things that might drive you nuts and it's acceptable. Like it is what it is. Just accept it. So I love Japan. I love going back whenever I get an opportunity. I encourage anybody to visit and give yourself at least 10 to 2 weeks or 10 days to 2 weeks. Give yourself that full investment into the country, into the food, into the culture. It's a beautiful place.
Wow. What was it like working with the Japanese pitching coaches? I think you said you had changed your delivery to include that like brief little pause. You like kept your starters arsenal, I think, as a reliever. What all did they do to you to like help you unlock your full potential?
Well, the cool thing about Japanese baseball is like they don't try to like limit your pitches. They don't sit there and say, just throw 1 or 2 pitches. Like we need the full arsenal because Japanese hitters are really good at fouling stuff off. They let the ball get super deep. I had some really cool pitching coaches. My first one was Daisuke Araki. He was a good man, good lighthearted guy. But I didn't really work with him as much as I did at the time, the bullpen coach, Tomohito Ito, who turned out to be a really good friend of mine. He saw something in me and he kind of took me under his wing and he played catch with me all the time. And he's one of the funniest guys I've ever met. He's got a really good sense of humor. But he worked with me daily to help develop my split and my cutter, which ended up being the 2 main things that really helped me be successful. I remember just being in bullpens, just struggling mightily with some of these things. I'm talking bouncing splits off the ceiling as it flies out of my hand and him just laughing his ass off. Like him just trying to keep it light and like letting like, listen, man, like we're not here. I'm glad you're trying this. We're not going to get it. And like to quote my AA, pitching coach, Jeff Pico, when you have a bad bullpen, you just turn and look and you say, Rome wasn't built in a day, and you just walk off, and like, it just, like, so like stuff like that. And then later on I got, who's the manager now was Takatsu, Shingo Takatsu. Side armor, pitched for the White Sox, played for Ozzy. He ended up being really good with him and Ito together. I really enjoyed working with those guys. And even in the minor leagues, they just encourage you to try stuff. They give you the space, especially when you're struggling or you're injured. They give you the space to just try. Just throw whatever you possibly can at the wall and let's see what sticks. In the States, especially in the development with the younger guys, or I mean, not younger guys, but guys like myself in the minor leagues, it's like, listen, you need to develop and you need to develop now. So take what you have, take what you're strong with, and go compete with it as hard and as fast as you can, and we'll see if it happens. And if you need to add something, do it in the off season and then bring it back into spring training because we just don't have the time. And maybe that's just my mentality at the time, but Japan really did give me the space to develop while also competing at a high level. I love Ito. He's one of my favorite people. I'm glad he's still with the team, so I get to see him in spring training every year. Go out to dinner and joke with them, and they still laugh and make fun of me because I was kind of a hothead. I'd lose my temper a little bit, here and there, just like anybody really, like I guess in that aggressive manner of being a pitcher like I was. They still laugh and joke about times that I kind of lost my shit a little bit, but. So it's good again, I'm in a fortunate spot where I get to go back and work with those same guys today and joke and laugh about all the trials and tribulations, the good times and the bad times that we all spent together on a baseball field.
I've always heard that pitchers say that their worst bullpens ended up being like their best starts, or like the days that they just didn't have it when they were warming up. It was like some of their better days. Is that a thing? And why is that?
It is the weirdest thing. I remember when I was a starter, you sit there and you're just not hitting anything. Your arm feels absolutely awful. And you're just like, oh man, I'm struggling today. And then next thing you know, you look up and you're 4 innings in, you've given up 1 hit and you're at like 52 pitches. Like, this is okay. Well, don't say anything now. I'm just going to keep rolling. And it turns out to be some of your better starts. And then all of a sudden there are those days where you get in there and you're just dotting it and you're just feeling good and everything's going well. And you kind of walk away from the mound. And you're like, oh, like, okay, like I want to take this from the mound, from the bullpen to the mound. And then all of a sudden ball 2, ball 3, first inning, you got guys on first and second, less than 2, and you're in like a 3-1 count with, the 4-hitter up and you're like, okay. And then all of a sudden there's a hard hit ball. It's this weird anomaly. Again, like you're not wrong. Every starting pitcher goes through it. I think it's a mental thing. It's got to be. That's the only thing I can point to. And it's just like when you're having a bad day, you kind of fall back into, you're like, okay, you know what? I don't have it today. Take some deep breaths, stay within yourself, go out there and just give it your best. The next thing you know, your body takes over and all your preparation takes over, and you end up performing at the level that you're supposed to, as opposed to the opposite of that, where you got all your stuff, you're feeling high and mighty, feeling cocky, getting out there, and then all of a sudden you're trying to do too much and you're pulling this or just leaving this open, and next thing you know, you're down 2 in the first and you're at 27 pitches, and it's the third inning and the bullpen's fired up. So
I think it's a great explanation for it. Yeah, maybe it's just like, well, it can't get any worse. I'm spiking everything. Nothing's a strike. I mean, that's kind of like rock bottom-ish, right?
Right. You're just like, well, that was awful. Now let's go see what the hitters do against it. And then all of a sudden, it's almost like the pressure's gone. So I never tried to have a bad bullpen, but I do remember having bad bullpens and then turning into pretty damn good starts. And then obviously the vice versa of that, having good bullpens and going out there and just 4 innings later, 102 pitches, I've given up 5, and here comes the hook. And it's a day game in Mobile and the bullpen's pissed.
When did the Rangers become interested? What was that like?
That was really cool. I knew obviously in 2015, I was having a really good season. I was probably at the best that I've ever been. I was missing barrels. I was shutting down games. And I remember halfway through the year, I was receiving an award. I can't remember for exactly what. It was just like a monthly award. And I was receiving it on the field. And my wife, at the time, my wife, she was down taking pictures, and a scout approached her and was like, "Hey, what's going on here? Like, why are you here so far?" And she was like, "Oh, well, he was like, okay, well, I'm so-and-so with the Texas Rangers. Like, do you think Tony would be interested in the States?" And she was like, "Well, obviously I'd have to talk to him." She kind of kept it diplomatic. You'll read more about that scenario in the book, but it was probably about halfway through that year when I started getting serious not offers, but like serious looks from major league teams. More cards were being passed along. Even the coaching staff at Yakult was kind of like aware, like, "Hey, Tony, like, there's no doubt, like, you're throwing in the upper 90s right now. You're 96, 97, sitting at 95 every night, and you're striking guys out and slamming doors. Like, we're not fooling anybody here. Like, the United States is interested." And so Texas was one of the first teams that actually showed interest. And then along the way, I think there was probably like 7 or 8 teams that kind of had their foot in the door of saying, "Hey, like, this might be a fit for us when free agency rolls around."
What was it about Texas that you were like, this is going to be, of all the other ones or all the other potential ones, what was it about the Rangers?
Texas was probably when it came to signing, they were the most serious, and like they put in the most effort. They really seemed like there were some teams that came in, they're like, "We're going to offer you a 1-year, minor league minimum," kind of thing. And it was like, okay, well, I don't think that's a very serious offer. That's them trying to like steal something, and I valued myself a lot more than that at the time. I could have gone back to Japan for a lot more money. I turned down money to come to the States because I had that itch to scratch. 12-year-old Tony would have looked at me and said, like, you turned that down. You had your opportunity to throw your hat in the ring of the best players in the world, and you didn't take it. Like, I think 12-year-old Tony would have been pretty disappointed in himself. So at that time in my life, I hadn't been to the big leagues, and I really needed to, for my own ego and my own satisfaction, say, I dreamed of being a Major League Baseball player. I want to be a Major League Baseball player. I want to challenge myself against the best in the world. And Texas seriously gave that opportunity when they offered me a 2-year deal. They were like, "Look, like, we think you're going to do great. We're going to fit you into our bullpen, however it folds out, but we want you to come in on our roster and, help us win ball games throughout the year." And so Texas was just, there's just something about them at that time that said, like, this is the right fit. Like, this is it. This is the team that wants me, and this is where I want to go. They were coming off of a winning season in 2015. And it was just and then we rolled that right into 2016. Obviously, unfortunately, we got trounced by Toronto in the first round, but we were one of the best ball clubs through and through in 2016, and we just when it comes to playoffs, you get cold at the wrong time, pack your bags. So, but it was about halfway through 2015 when Texas really became like they acknowledged that they were interested, and from there on out they were the name that kept calling, and eventually there I was in spring of 2016 with a Rangers jersey in my locker.
Yeah. Those like mid 2010s Rangers teams were so much fun. There was a lot of great veteran presences on that team, as you obviously know.
Yes.
What was it like walking into that clubhouse for the first time as a rookie, but not just any kind of rookie, one that, was 32 years old, it wasn't a traditional rookie experience. What was that like when you first got to Texas?
I mean, I was nervous, like obviously, like you just said, I was 32 years old. I wasn't just, I hadn't been in the minor league system. I'm coming from Japan. You see a lot of these star players at Adrian Beltre, Shin-Soo Choo, Elvis Andrews, these guys that are, all-stars just about every single year. Obviously, Adrian's a Hall of Fame player. It was neat, though, because at the time there was Colby Lewis. And Colby and I, obviously, we shared something right out the gate of going to Japan and coming back. And Colby was extremely welcoming. Tom Wilhelmsen was one of the guys in the bullpen at the time. And you can't meet a more welcoming human being than Tom Wilhelmsen. And we had known some people in common that we had found out. So, and I just wanted to prove myself. It was like that time I was like, yeah, I'm old here, but I'm not old here, but I'm 32. Like, I do need to prove that I belong here. And that was probably more internal than anything else. Later on, I had some guys admit that when I first walked in, they were kind of side-eyeing me, like, who's this guy? Like, he's going to come in and take our innings. Like, what the hell's going on? Like what is it? What is this guy and who is he? 32-year-old from Japan. Like, what are we doing around here? And I just, that knowing, I just did myself to be my best, to be myself. I did my best to be myself and just go out there and compete as hard as I can and just kind of prove to the guys, like, I do belong. I'm here to help, and I'm here to win. So it was nerve-wracking, but man, it was cool, especially seeing your name on a big league locker after I kind of like reserved it that was never going to happen.
And you came out of the gates hot too. Like, it wasn't like it took you a little bit to like establish your footing too in Texas. Like, what was it, something you learned in Japan that you think, made you have so much success right out of the gate? And like, do you think if you wouldn't have gone to Japan that you still would have had that same kind of like arc?
Well, if I didn't go to Japan, I don't know what would have transpired after that. It's kind of hard to tell. But I remember that first night out in Seattle, I lost the game for Martin Perez. I came in, gave up 2 runs. And after that, I kind of settled in and had some really good outings and went on the rest of the season. But it was business as usual for me once the competition started. I was used to having a third deck. I was used to having 20, 30, 40,000 fans in the stands. And as loud as a Japanese baseball can get, those stadiums erupt, and they've got horns in the outfield. They've got bands and they've got chants. So the noise and the size of the stadiums wasn't an issue for me. The magnitude of the game wasn't an issue for me. It really was just me falling into myself and trusting my abilities. I think the first night I probably had a little bit of nerves just going in there and trying to do too much and, got hit around a little bit. But after that, I just kind of, with the help of Jeff Bannister and some of my teammates, they helped me, be comfortable. And I remember after that first night, Jeff came up to me and he smiled and he was like, there's there's nothing better than the big leagues, huh? And it was just like one of those moments that was like, okay, like, don't take yourself so seriously right now. You're here, take a deep breath and just go do what you're capable of doing. And after that, I calmed down and had a really good run of scoreless innings. And I fit well into a bullpen of guys that were having a ton of success at the time. And I kind of made my, carved out my mark there towards the middle innings.
Being from Washington State, was it kind of cool that you got to face the Seattle Mariners in your first MLB outing?
Yeah, except for the fact that I gave up those runs and got the loss.
That one, yeah.
But like it would have been. I think it would have been pretty cool if it was still the Kingdom. Because like that's kind of like what I grew up in. I was in high school when they erected a Safeco, or what is it? It's T-Mobile Park now. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it was cool. Especially when we came back, because the first time around I was pretty serious and like just making sure I was like laser focused. The next time around, see a lot of friends and family come out and say hey, and just kind of, because that open bullpen there, it's kind of one of the neater bullpens in the league where the fans can just sit right there and they're just, so close right on top of you. But it is cool that, made my debut in my hometown with a lot of family and friends in support. But as a perfectionist, you never want to go out there and give up runs, especially get the loss for a guy that just went out there and competed. So I was kind of upset with myself that night, and they were like, how was it pitching the big leagues? I was like, I didn't get the job done. Like it's great and all, guys, but I lost, and I ended up getting my first MLB strikeout. I think it on like a backup cutter out of the zone. I think they were just chomping at the bit, knowing this guy's going to throw a meatball in there that night. But we got it out of the way, rebounded well, and had a really cool 2016 run.
I've always wondered this because I was just in Dallas last month and I went to a game at Globe Life, and it's indoors and it's really comfortable. What was it like playing outside in Texas?
Hot as hell, man. Those summer days get hot down there in Arlington. But again, it was one of those things that's kind of like a home field advantage. Because especially during a day game, the sun in left field just beats right into the visiting bullpen. You saw guys like rip pads off the wall trying to hide under the shade, and those August days or the July-August day games. I remember one of the hottest ever being on a baseball field. It was like a July day game against Oakland, and man, it was just scorching hot. So, but that being said, like when the sun goes down, I have fond memories of sitting in that bullpen high up in the ballpark in Arlington. I think is one of the best seats I had in all of baseball that year. We had a little air-conditioned room that you see the guys in Arlington. They would walk down the stairs and then come back up, walk down the stairs. We had a little air-conditioned room to keep ourselves cool. Had a little TV we could watch the game on in there at times. But it just watching ball games from the right field perch out there in Arlington, it really was a true pleasure of my life and my career. That's it. It's one of the best views in all of baseball. We got those high chairs out there. You kick your feet up on the wall, and I mean, you're just kind of sitting there. And especially when the ballpark would fill up, it's just such a cool atmosphere. I mean, most Major League Baseball players are cool atmospheres when the stands are full, but I've got a special place in my heart for that bullpen in Arlington.
I've always wondered that because even just walking around outside in Texas, you're like, why did it take them so long up until like a couple years ago for them to put like a roof over it? But so you said it was like a pretty significant like home field advantage because like were you guys just used to it? Was the opposing bullpen, like you said, just getting beat up by the sun all day?
I mean, it's just like, you go out to batting practice and it's hot. You wake up, like you said, you're in Texas, you wake up in the morning and it's hot and humid. You go to the field and it's hot and humid. You do batting practice, it's hot and humid. You don't really stop sweating until you are walking back out onto the field, and then you start sweating again. So, I mean, it's just kind of something that you get used to. And it's just the day games. I mean, when the nights drop in Texas, it's absolutely beautiful there during the summers. But those day games, man, like that visiting bullpen got absolutely torched. Those poor guys. I never had to sit over there for a game, so I don't know what it feels like, but it looked absolutely miserable.
Yeah, it's insane. All right, so I have a couple last quick questions for you.
Yeah.
Playing with Elvis Andrus and Adrian Beltre, their relationship was one of my favorite things, like kind of like the big brother, little brother. What was it like being their teammate, and what kind of stuff did you remember from those two guys?
I mean, it's just fantastic. Something like playing with a Hall of Famer like Adrian, looking over and just realizing like what he's done throughout his career, how many hits and like just how many Gold Gloves, and just what an absolute stud of a third baseman he is. Their relationship, shortstop third base is obviously hilarious. It brings up a lot of cool highlights and funny times, and they had a style of play together that worked so well together, and they knew it and they built upon it. But one of my favorite things about Adrian was at the very end of the inning, or not the end of the inning, when you throw your last bullpen pitch or your warm up pitch, catcher throws it down, they kind of give the ball around the horn. Adrian gets it. Nick Martinez let me in on this right away, or else Adrian doesn't tell you this. But Nick Martinez like, hey, when Adrian's going to throw you the ball back, he's going to absolutely rocket it at you. And so I was ready for it, luckily. But if you're not ready for it, you're gonna have to react quick. And so, sure enough, Adrian gets the ball back out there around the horn, and he looks at the pitcher, make sure you're looking at him, and he just lets one go right at you every single time. I absolutely loved it. So I would throw my warm-up pitches, and I would do my walk around the mound, and I would just kind of stand a little bit back towards first base a little bit, and I would just like put my glove up, like, bring it. And I think he recognized it too, and he would just rocket one off, and I would just snap it, and like it was just kind of like one of those things, like, all right, it's time to lock in, like innings ready to go. One time he threw a cutter, and I had to react, and I reached up over my right shoulder real quick, and I caught this thing in the very end of my glove. It was gonna hurt somebody, and he was just kind of like, and I caught it, and he was like, good job, kind of thing. And I was like, oh man, like, but that was one of my favorite things about Adrian. Then obviously just watching him work, the plays he made, those barehanded plays where he would just like be, feet would be in the air, and his hand would be 3 inches off the ground, just rocketing at a ball or just throwing a ball from his knees, and just the way that he would set his feet and throw a rocket across the diamond. Elvis is capable of making all-star plays every single day. Just two exciting guys. And then had the fortune, again, like we had such a good defense. We had Mitch Moreland over at first, and I don't know how many runs he saved that year as a first baseman, but it's you don't talk much about good defensive first baseman, but when you talk about Mitch, you talk about one of the best ever to do it. So you had on the two corners, you had Mitch Moreland and Adrian Beltre. Nothing was getting down the lines. Those guys were, bar none, two of the best corner guys I've ever played with, and had the pleasure of, anybody could throw a ball in the dirt. Mitch is going to pick it. Just phenomenal athletes, phenomenal ball players. Again, I could sit there and talk about each individual guy that we played with in Texas and have a fond memory of him, all the way to Bartolo and just his calm, cool demeanor that he just embodies. Everybody loves Bartolo, and there's reasons why.
That's the best. I watched there's a compilation of Elvis and Adrian just like going brotherly love. And I think, was it Adrian doesn't like to have his head touched or something?
He doesn't like to have his head touched, and if you get him, like, he's going to swing on you.
Yep.
And Adrian's he's a strong individual. So if you're going to do it, you better get out of the way. You better move quick.
What's it been like seeing Profar? Because you saw Jurickson Profar at the beginning of his career, first time All-Star at the age of 31. How cool is that, seeing just his career progression?
It is cool. It's cool to see any young ball player who, especially as young as he got called up, the expectations on him were so high, so fast. And when you have any expectations on you as a ball player, I remember after that first night in Seattle for myself, I gave up runs, and then you check social media or whatever, and they're like, oh, the Barnette experiment is done. It was like after like 12 pitches, they were like already checked, people were already checking out the door. So like a young prospect like Profar came up, I think he was like 18 or 19 when he first got his call up. He was super young, and to see him develop and go through the trials and tribulations of learning the game and making mistakes on a grand stage, and then finally coming into his own, maturing and, reaching peak manhood. And all of a sudden he's having such a phenomenal year amongst other phenomenal baseball players and being awarded an all-star, an all-star pick. It's great to see. He was always a fun teammate, always a good guy. He's always had that smile on his face, except for when he does get mad. He turns serious pretty quick, but he's such a loving guy and like a good-hearted dude. It's fun to watch, ex-teammates, get their due. Like last year, watching Leclerc close out the World Series. He was super young in that bullpen with us. And for him to, get that ring and be the guy on the mound, you're proud for the guy. You're happy for him. Like as I was for the entire Texas organization, especially all those people that work behind the scenes to make sure that we have everything we need to do as baseball players ready to go every single day. It's cool to see people get their due, especially when they work hard and they show up every single day and they get rewarded in the end. And just like Profar is now, I hope he has a good, strong second half and make a push for MVP consideration too.
Yes. Yeah, no, he's crushing it in San Diego. All right, a couple last ones.
Yep.
I saw a video of your walkout in Japan to Van Halen. First of all, that song rocks. Like, what did the home crowd get into it? Like, was it kind of like, did you feel like the fan push with that song?
The funny thing about Van Halen's Jump or Panama, that was I probably had that video, that walkout song for like 3 games. My walkout song for almost the entirety of Japan was ZZ Top Sharp Dressed Man. And that I love that song. It absolutely rocks on the stadium. And then I had that going into Texas as well. For some reason, that Panama one just is stuck in the video like realm, and people think it was. Well, so what happened was I was struggling a little bit, and like I had met some guys away from the field, and I kind of asked them, I was like, "Hey guys," I was like, "I'm gonna let you guys pick my next walkout song." And they got together and they're like, they gave me like 3 options, and I was like, "All right, I picked one. I'll let you guys know." And they're like fans of the team, and like they'd go to the games, and I was like, "All right, I'll let you guys know when I go into the game." And sure enough, it was Panama. Did it for like 3 games. I did okay in those 3 games. And I was like, you know what? It's not the song's fault. It's my fault. I need to go back to ZZ Top, and sure enough, I did. And things worked out, started doing well again. But so ZZ Top Sharp Dressed Man was probably my most prolific walkout song. And the fans loved it. The fans would jam to it. It's a really cool song on the loudspeakers. It's a good tune. It's good rhythm. And I mean, ZZ Top, those guys jam. Love those guys.
That's such a great song for a reliever walkout. Yeah, it's crazy seeing the stadiums, the way they do the lights and the pyrotechnics. I feel like now for reliever entrances. Did you have everything like that in Texas?
Nope, didn't get that. Didn't get that in Texas. They had kind of the lighting kind of thing, but they weren't very the lighting people. And the we kind of argued with Texas, because like a lot of the times in Texas, if you're at a home game, you would realize that the walkout song isn't getting played, but the commercials are. Like they'd be doing like fan like commercial stuff, and then all of a sudden your song wouldn't start playing until like you got like 10 seconds left to go, and then all of a sudden the visiting team would have like a full song the entire time. We're like, guys, like give them the ads, let them try to warm up to the ad of selling Bluebell ice cream. Let us get our full song here. So we kind of had a little bit of a quarrel, or not a quarrel, but just kind of like a moment to talk to the guys upstairs, be like, okay, like let's give us a little bit of give our bullpen a little bit of hype here, let's let us hype up. But no, the lights and stuff now, it's like a WWE entrance. It's awesome. It's so sick. Like when Edwin Diaz came out with that trumpet and that song, it was kind of like one of the forefront. It was like one of the beginnings of it. And now you see these guys walk out songs, and it's like Undertaker's taking the stage again. It's fantastic. It's so much fun to watch, especially being in the stadium for it. I mean, what an experience. And, it's all about building fan experiences and, helping the fans have a really good experience and supporting their teams. And like one thing Japan does really well is they have really good fan experiences with the songs and the dances and like their cheers and their chants. And it gets a lot of people in the door that aren't necessarily baseball fans. They're just there for a party. And I think MLB is kind of getting that way a little bit more, where the stadiums are getting a little bit more rowdy on an average basis, which is fun to see.
Oh, it's the best. Yeah, especially when the reliever ties it into like the city itself. Like I went to a Pirates game and David Bednar uses like the Steelers like Renegade. Yeah. It's like that. That's like the whole stadium. Like you can't wait for David Bednar to pitch just for 2 minutes to get to scream, sing, sticks.
Right. And I mean, could we imagine like if we had Jason Grilli closing out ball games in Pittsburgh at the time too? Like just get some absolute madman that's out there, some wild child that's like come out to some Pittsburgh, just to some city song that like everybody resonates with. Lights start flashing. And I mean, if all of a sudden you had in San Diego at the time, if you had Hell's Bells with the lights and stuff like, and Hoffman taking the mound, it was already electric as it was. Or you get those lights going with Enter Sandman and Mariano. My God. What a sight to see, that's one of those things. If you only get to go to one baseball game and you see that, you tell everybody about it the rest of your life. So
no doubt,
I hope they keep getting better with the in-stadium entertainment and things of that nature, with how to use like pyrotechnics and lighting and music. And it's fun to be a fan now. It's fun to sit on the other side of the fence and like watch it and just be a part of that. So I'm heading to a Red Sox game at the end of September, so I'm excited for that.
I went to my first Red Sox game just a couple months ago. Sweet Caroline hit. It hit.
I got to warm up in. That's another cool thing about being in the big leagues. I'm sitting on the stand on the mound, warming up to Sweet Caroline in the stands. Like that's something I remember. I just remember the whole thing. Like nobody giving a crap what I'm doing. All they're just like belting out Sweet Caroline and just hoping that their hitters give up, or their hitters go out and score 7. But
yeah.
So like I'll get to be a fan at Fenway, and I'm excited for that.
Oh, dude, it's the best. All right, last question. What is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh, man. I kind of always go towards this one. My dad always told me growing up, is that no matter how good you are, there will always be somebody better. And it's kind of like tough to tell, like, especially like a young kid or whatever, saying like, you're not the best. Like you may be good, but there will be somebody better no matter what you do. And he kind of tied into that with saying like, no matter what you do, there will always be somebody better. what matters is what you do when no one's watching, and like how much you want it, because like, and then sure enough, you get to the big league level and everybody's good. And at that time, you get to that stage of saying, well, who wants it the most now? And when you boil it all the way down to the very end of the season, after 162 get played and you're playing that 187th game or whatever it is to win the World Series, you have a group of guys that just wanted it more than everybody else. And I think that always resonated with me, was saying like, I'm really good right now. Don't sit on it, because there's somebody either right behind you who's better and coming for you, or there's somebody in front of you that's better and you need to reach to. So I would say like, it's just when my dad told me like, no matter how good you think you are, there's going to be somebody better. And it just kind of, as you grow up and you kind of realize what he's saying, you tie that into, you're never as good as your best day and you're never as bad as your worst. Like, it's just like, the separation between all of us is in how well we prepare. Especially when you get to the higher levels, each level you go up, you find that the most prepared dude on the field is usually going to win most of the nights out there. Because skill sets, everything gets matched. Like Bannister told me, he's like, you don't graduate from here. When you're at the big leagues, like there's no next level. You're at the top of the level of your sport and of your craft. Now, so you hear that and you're like, okay, well now the only thing to say is who wants it the most? And if you don't want it, and then it's funny, like I'll get a little long with that. Jack Howell, he was our minor league guy in the Diamondback system. And I remember being young and he kind of getting mad at us as a group, like at home. And he was kind of like pointing outside and he was like, if there's something out there that's more important than what's going on right here, then pack your bag now. You're never going to make it. And, you're young and you're like, okay, Jack, like it's 8:00 in the morning. Can we get on with stretch? That later on you're sitting there thinking about it and you're like, damn, like that guy's right. Like the second something comes, like the second you lose focus at the big league level, at the top levels, like somebody's going to pass you up or you're going to slip. And, you watch enough baseball and you realize like at the very end of the day, when it comes to the playoffs, those who win the World Series are the ones that make the least amount of mistakes at the end. Because those mistakes on that stage, at that level, at that time, they get capitalized on every single time. So I would say that's the best piece of advice that I got. And it was just something that resonated with me and kind of stuck with me throughout my entire career, to say, as good as you are right now, like don't quit, like don't sit on
it. That rocks. That's so good. I love that, dude. This has been incredible. Seriously, thank you for, giving me an hour of your time. I hope everybody checks out the book, Baseball Gaijin, Chasing a Dream to Japan and Back. Look at that.
Right there.
Got it right there.
Longer hair, longer beard. Trying to be scary in those days. But yeah, you can find it on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. Anybody that reads it, I hope you enjoy it. And like I've told people before, if my story can inspire one person, then it's a successful story and it's a successful adventure.